6:30. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, with hopes that the accurate timekeeper will return to Lagos soon, I bid you welcome. Good morning. I am Bukola Koka.
Well, just look up behind you, Buki. You see the clock. The time there. So we know who our accurate timekeeper is. Buki, don't worry. He'll be back in a jiffy. Oh, dear. But what a day it is. And who knows what's part of history, how the people of Gabon will be relating with this one, guys.
You know, for those who are not aware, army officers appeared on television in Gabon, national television, to say they have taken power. They said they were annulling the results of Saturday's election in which President Ali Bongo was declared the winner. The Electoral Commission said Mr. Bongo had won just under 2/3 of the vote in an election the opposition argued was fraudulent. Now, his overthrow would end his family's 53-year-old hold on power in Gabon. Those who know would remember that his father governed the nation between 1967 and 2009. He just recently won this third-term election again, and the army officers clearly said, enough. As you said, Chamberlain, the natural question that I want to ask is, so how do the Gabonese feel about this? What has been their reaction? Maybe I've not scoured the social media or internet enough to see it, but clearly that position is there. And the natural question a good number of people are also asking, Malpa, is another coup? Someone said on Twitter, by the way, maybe by this volume or this deluge of coups, politicians will begin to get some sense.
Mm. Well, another coup in a francophone country.
Underlined.
Now, whether this has anything to do with France, I'm sure that analysts will be able to intervene once more, because some people have said, oh, the coup that we've witnessed in francophone countries have been as a result of resistance to France in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger. And now we see Gabon, even though Gabon is not in West Africa. So we might not get to hear ECOWAS on this. But you have to ask what exactly the problem is with some African leaders. You know, why is it that they cannot see beyond their noses? Now, Mr. Ali Bongo, from what we understand, had suffered a stroke some time back, and he was even asked to step aside as a result of his poor health. But he refused. He's held on to power. I think a number of people were hoping that perhaps with the elections, they will be able to maybe ease him out. After all, you know, he's been there a while. This will be his 14th or 15th year now. He's been there since 2009. I mean, you've held on to power for a pretty considerable time, unless, of course, he was trying to beat his father's record. But it looks like the military people are not having it. The question now is, what exactly is going to be their game plan? Because oftentimes, too, you know, the people do not trust the military to hold on to power. The experience of, you know, Africans has been that when, you know, they remove a civilian government from power, it does take a while. In fact, sometimes a very long while before they too are forced out, you know, or, you know, made to ensure that there is some return to democratic rule. And oftentimes that takes a long time. So while, you know, the people of Gabon might rejoice, and while people will say there is plenty of, you know, justification for what has happened in Gabon, the question I think they need to now be asking the military that has, you know, taken over is, what are you going to do? Now that you have the power, what are you going to do with it? Is it so that you can give it to the opposition whom you think might have won? Or is it so that you can conduct fresh elections, you know, for the country? Or is it for you to hold on to this power and do with it as you please? These are the key questions, because I'm sure the people of Gabon would really like to determine their own future. Sometimes they speak tongue-in-cheek and say the military too are a part of the people of Gabon. It's not Nigerian military that is there. But we do know that people oftentimes prefer a civilian government, you know, or not ruling, I don't want to say ruling over them. After all, they'll say, oh, Mabongo and Libongo. What?
Yeah, those were rulers.
But they were civilians.
50.
Weren't they? But that's not what we're looking for. That's not what we're hoping will happen. If indeed we really want to practice democracy in Africa, then I think that we need to, you know, speak some home truths to ourselves. So whilst this might get a lot of people rejoicing and saying, oh, yes, but the people of Gabon deserve so much better, I think they need to start asking very quickly in the day, to what end has this coup been carried out? Is it so that the military can stay in power and perpetuate themselves there? Or is it so that they can quickly, you know, set in motion a constitutional process that gives power ultimately to the people that Gabon would want to lead them? Bukola?
Indeed, Maokbe, you know, I'd start off by saying that two wrongs really do not make a right. If indeed, you know, the Omar Bongo family have held on to power for 56 years, will the military, you know, taking over power resolve the situation in Gabon? And then again, we need to ask ourselves what's happening in French Africa, if not French West Africa. You know, I had, of course, watch your interview with Mrs. Chiombori Kwao, and, you know, she had some time talking about, you know, the state of things, particularly with the finances in French West Africa, in the entire French Africa, to be precise. You know, the colonial agreements that have been sustained, about how a part of the finances goes to the French reserve banks. That has been renewed, but then again, it doesn't take away the fact that the Commonwealth of French West Africa, and indeed the entire French Africa, is being carted away by France. Is this the conversation that, you know, ECOWAS officials or officials at the African Union level are avoiding to have? You know, what exactly is the reason for the zeal of ECOWAS intervening in the Niger situation? Will ECOWAS also, will the African Union at the bigger level now, at the larger level, be as zealous about intolerance for coups in other parts of Africa? All of these issues are germane to the unity of the entire region, such that they can stand up to the other international partners in the Committee of Nations. How did the people of Gabon feel about this coup? Are they rejoicing? Because according to reports, we know that it's an oil and cocoa-rich country, but then it is extremely poor. What has the Bongo family been doing with the resources of the Gabonese people in the entire 56-year reign? It really calls to question, you know, the efficacy of democracy in that part of Africa. So we look forward to seeing how the military is going to handle this. Military coups, this doesn't say that military coups are welcome in any part of the country. Democracy should always be the way to go. And by the way, there's also that report, that concern about how, you know, certain military officials have been linked, particularly the military juntas in some parts of Africa have been linked to the carting off of the rich mineral resources, and of course, in fact, questionable drug dealings in some parts of Africa. So there should be no tolerance for military coups. But we look to see how the leadership at the African Union level will handle this. Ayo.
Well, it's going to be very, very, I don't know, because even the last time, and by the way, guys, this country exported, they said $3.61 billion worth of crude oil in 2021. And yet the people are impoverished, according to some of the reasons we're given.
I mean, they're not exactly as populated as we are.
So what's the excuse? And the family has been in power for 56 years. That is a lot. That is a lot.
That money has obviously found its way to private accounts. I mean, you can say that that's the reason why one family will want to perpetuate itself in power. I mean, from father to son. And if maybe they were not stopped, they would have been to grandson, you know, forever and ever. You know, and that's not just. He would also have a clique of people around him.
Oh, most definitely.
You know, of course, who would have also enjoyed the privilege of being close to power. And
which are the people that, my apologies, Malcolm, which are the people that probably were urging them on and saying,
you always have this kind of
going,
keep going. The people love you.
We're with you, and all of those things. You know, it's something that I've heard leaders, leadership consultants, advocates talk about. That is what they call elite consensus. The elite consensus is expected to say, you know what, in this community, let's all agree to sacrifice this, so that we all can move this nation forward in our eventual benefit, long-term benefit. That's what a good number of people will say happened in the UK, in the US, the developed countries generally. But that has been largely lacking in African countries. It's the same thing that happened in Dubai, which we are praising now. Their leadership style is different from ours. Their leadership system is different from ours. But then we have adopted democracy. Can we have an elite consensus? Can the elders agree? I've spoken with someone who is very vast in African affairs, and he said the problem is not the change of name from Organization of African Unity to African Union. It is that there is no consensus. And until we have that consensus, even AU will continue to be toothless.
Well, you know, even African countries need to also have a rethink, because if you look through all of those people who die in the seas trying to get across to Europe, the whole different parts of Africa just moving, that's telling. That is very telling. So I just thought it was a matter of time, because they should have seen the handwriting on the wall a long time ago. When you have a population, a continent with very large young population, it will be restive if they don't seem to be getting certain things done, especially it's a global village and the labor force shrinks globally. So you could be here, you work anywhere. So leaders need to also understand. I think it's a lesson for us back home here in terms of what we do after having said and promised a lot across board. So we need to also ensure that development, because when they were creating different states, they told us, we have to make sure development gets to each and every part of the year.
Has it got
How far are we now?
Has it even left the location where it's supposed to be?
Okay, so let's go in and take a look at the dailies this morning, meaning leaders need to find a way. Get feedback from people, even if your hanger's on and telling you something else, you must find a way to filter information beyond that circle, or those people who will shield you from several things, because at the end of the day, they all come back into the society. Look at what New Telegraph leads with here. We're facing economic challenges, Arewa traders tell APC. As Bishop says, Nigerians are suffering. Food security. Tinubu will reduce price of fertilizers, ascribed to Shatima. So, and then, let's see if this brings it down. Cooking gas. Security looms as forex squeeze stalls 255 billion naira LPG import.
That's scarcity. Scarcity looms.
As FX squeeze stalls. Yeah, but we are a nation. What word is better than blessed with gas resources?
I watched our colleague yesterday, Ini, talking to, I think, the gas, there's an association of gas people, and she was congratulating them that they now have a minister, who's exclusively for gas. And I think she was asking the gentleman to explain the difference, because there are different types of gas. Yeah. They say we are blessed in gas. How can we be blessed in gas and we're still looking for Forex to import our gas? Or to import gas. She was trying to, I think he eventually shed some light on the different types of gases that we have, that are useful, and, the kind of things that can bring us profit. Yeah, LPG, natural, exactly, the different types of
LNG.
gas. If you missed that edition of Business Morning, you can go back and watch it, perhaps to understand this. But, wives, or I say people who use gas generally, even businesses, because don't forget, a lot of restaurants are opening up. They're not using, a number of them in urban areas, they're not using firewood to cook. Yeah. It's but gas. So if,
Add to that, my apologies, add to that, bakers,
and households, a lot of households are now using this commodity, to make their food. So there was a time we celebrated, that the price of gas has fallen. I mean, that cooking gas has come down because demand has fallen in Europe. There was now more gas available for cooking. It does appear that the price is about to go up now because of this forex crunch. If there is scarcity, obviously, the price is going to go up. I hope that this doesn't inform panic, and it's certainly going to affect households. If the price goes up, it's going to affect businesses if the price goes up. So I hope that this is something that the federal government looks at, especially as they're looking to, give palliatives to the people. Don't give us palliatives and, something else is taking away the palliative, And for those who do not have palliatives, who are expected to still use their earnings, please, just... What?
To get what? To use the earnings for...
To buy gas. To buy gas. Well, don't let us buy it at a higher rate. That will be one way of making sure that we have some palliatives.
Absolutely. One of the things a number of people in the business have talked about is, look, you keep saying that petroleum and its products and byproducts are denominated in the dollar.
Yeah.
Nigeria has it in abundance. Do we have to spend dollar to buy what we produce at home?
Don't we have oil in abundance?
that argument is out there. I mean, come on, this thing is made in River State.
So there are two ways it works. I mean, that's the thing about this. It's actually a double-edged sword. On the one hand, when your product or your commodity that you have is priced in dollars, is one of the ways that you are guaranteed, how will I put it, an inflow of FX. But on the other hand, the sharp end, hits your citizens, especially when the value of your currency is not exactly at par with the currency in which your commodity is valued. And that's basically what we're facing. So I sincerely hope that, there is, because that's one of the arguments that the association chairman made yesterday, that we cannot price this thing in dollars for our own citizens. This is something that we own. But then, how do you then price it when you're about to export it?
If you want to export it, go ahead, please. Have two prices for it. I don't think Volvo is sold at the same cost.
No, so that's not how it works. Yeah. Exploration. Before gas is explored, the people who are going to do the exploration must know how much it is that they can make, and that's usually denominated in dollars.
But at the moment, what they also tell us, largely those in that industry, is say, look, what we even use at the moment is associated gas. When you're prospecting for oil, then you get gas. Not that you're directly going for gas.
Exactly.
No, but some companies are doing that now. They're prospecting directly for gas.
Yeah, but largely it's associated gas. So you could imagine if we then energy or frost. Interesting, they're all natural. Liquefied natural gas, compressed natural gas, LP. I mean, well, I guess
we'll bring
the minister.
Maybe we'll bring the association chairman once more.
Yeah, but it's interesting, since the government has deliberately created a ministry for that. I mean, that shows that, look, they want to do something different about this. So we'll be looking to see what happens on that particular one here today. So I think that will be it with New Telegraph.
Look at the Leadership newspaper, and the front page, the lead story is not looking very good. Bitter tales about exploitation of children as maids persists. Those figures aren't any better. 15 million children are engaged in child labor in Nigeria, according to the ILO, and that's perhaps the ones that we know. According to NAPTIP, it's an offense to employ, require, recruit, transport, harbor, receive, or hire out a child under the age of 12 as a domestic worker. 80%, a girl child is 80% more likely to be assaulted and sold into child labor than a boy child. Those are horrible statistics.
Horrible? Well, I skipped one story which says how NNPCL service agents under dispense fuel, and it's in parentheses.
Well, I don't want to take away from your story, Chamberlain, but I'm very happy that the leadership is highlighting what it's highlighting on the front page, bitter tales about exploitation of children as maids persist. And this is an unspoken evil that continues to happen in our society. It's something that we rarely talk about it, because if you go and do the math, or you go and, if this is on the front page, you might find that many people are guilty.
As a matter of fact, there's a borderline between that exploitation, and what NAPTIP usually tell us is what? Child trafficking.
Very thin line, very, very thin line. So I sincerely hope that, you know, people like myself, because oftentimes what happens is, you know, people have to work. Both parents are working. They need somebody at home to keep an eye on maybe their children, keep an eye on maybe their business, need help in the home, etc. These are the things that happen within our homes. Can we at least make sure that they're adults? You know, 18 years and above, even though the law says, I think, above 12 or so. Can we make sure that if we do decide to take children, teenagers, that we treat them as human beings? Now, that might be me preaching, but I think that, you know, NAPTIP also has a huge task here, not just NAPTIP. Government also has a huge task. I think that falls under the purview sometimes of the Ministry of Women and Children, or sometimes Women and Social Affairs.
Yeah.
These are things we rarely talk about. So I think leadership must be commended for putting bringing this to the front page and highlighting it. I hope that, you know, the authorities that are concerned will take a look at this story and see what it is that they can do about it.
You know, Mark, sorry, you know, we're talking about the ones that get paid, right? How about family members?
Oh, yeah.
That are used for exactly
the same purpose.
The same purpose. Exact same purpose. I mean, you live in a particular house. Yes. You live in a particular home. You respect that, okay, they are people, they are my people, my uncles, you know, brother or my auntie's son or something. Next thing you know, for whatever reason, these children are treated like...
That could be child abuse there.
It is child abuse.
Exactly what it is.
It is child abuse. Generally, look, we don't need to go far. Only recently, the Lagos State Police Command arrested a 10-year-old who was caught with drugs on her. What was she doing? They said she just came from Ilorin. She came to stay with her aunt in Lagos.
She turned out to a courier.
Yes, and the aunt turned her to a courier. Take this thing to the market for me, and that's what she does every day. She tapes it to the poor girl's body, and then, you know, but how far with that story, by the way? We haven't, you know, received any updates on it. But that's usually the sort of abuse that children that age are subjected to, and that was supposed to be a family member. And there's that one, and there's also the ones who are paid. I mean, according to like, if you are paid, you're even fortunate.
I'm telling you, that's just it. But now, we're talking about 15 million people now, according to stats. How about the stats we don't know? That's one. Secondly, don't forget what former President Obasanjo said at some time. If you don't pay attention to these people, we are raising a team of terrorists for the future. And sincerely,
they'll definitely grow up being angry at the
system. Because they are scandalized for life, and if they could be treated like that, they don't care who else they treat that way. Do you remember what some people did when they were in boarding school? Their seniors treated them one way, and they did exactly the same thing to the people
perpetrated for life.
Exactly. So if that happened in schools, how's that not to happen at homes? Well, you know what? A lot to say, but that's the Leadership newspaper this morning.
Yes, on the front page of Leadership. Well, Guardian has a different story, and they are looking at the economy. CBN BDCs on collision course as FX black market premium widens. It's on page 6 of the paper. Don't forget that only recently the central bank decided to empower the BDCs again by bringing them back into the fold. The idea is that they will give, you know, they will serve as some sort of balance to the banks, who also are supposed to be able to give people, you know, that PTCs and what is that now? But the thing is, if both the BDCs and the banks now have a particular rate at which they trade, why is the gap widening? That's a big question. Why is this gap widening? Why is there a difference, you know, a marked difference between what is in the official window and what is in the black market? After all, the Naira has been floated.
So is that collision going to be for our own good?
I should think so, because I think it will mean that the BDC will be, you know, the CBN will be wondering what exactly is happening in the BDCs. Page 6 is where you find it.
Let them collide.
Let the collision start, eh? Well, you also see here, private sector okays Tinubu's reforms, 6 inputs in federal government's 8-point agenda. That's there. Federal government promises completion of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway by mid-September. And does look like they have a special story or some analysis for you. An army of retired active generals still recruited.
Okay.
It's on page 4 of the paper.
So I just spoke about
I really don't understand what it means, but at least I understand the first part. An army of retired active generals. Page 4. If you're interested in that story, as I am, flip to that on the Guardian newspapers.
Well, the Daily Independent is what I have next for you, and they take a detour from the other papers, you know, in terms of subject matters for interest. They zero in on politics, opposition politics to be precise. And this is the big story. NNPP crisis worsens as blocs suspend Kwankwaso, NWC, others. There's just one rider. Parties, BOT, NEC hold parallel meetings, claim authority. Now, this is reminiscent of what's happening in the Labour Party as well. And, you know, upon suspension of the party's presidential candidate, there's news that the other factions too have been suspended. Well, we'll see how that turns out. But take a look at this one at the bottom strip, which should, you know, provide some relief for Nigerians. But then again, they shouldn't sit pretty. It's coming from the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency. NIHSA allays fear of flooding, confirms closure of Lagdo Dam, warns that excessive rains may cause flooding, though, in some states. I'd say, well, my own opinion is like a nose, everybody has one. Relocate to safer places. It's better to be safe than sorry. There's also this one right beside it on the front page, job racketeering probe. Reps summon VCs over allegation of bribe against lawmakers. And we had quite a conversation on that with the chairman of that committee and member representing Plateau State, Honorable Gagdi. And he says, wait for the lawmaker who was accused of bribery to return and make a case for himself. But he also reveals that there are quite some findings from the investigation about the extent of corruption in agencies on job racketeering, perpetrated based on the waiver principle or the waiver order that allows agencies not to publish advertisements for employment. Well, you can follow up on that conversation on our sister program, Politics Today. Let's leave it there for the Daily Independent.
Vanguard newspaper next. How FG can execute roadmap for economy. NESG, OPS, others. So it's ascribed to them. Ministers must set specific national targets, ascribed to NESG. Strong coordination among ministries critical, that's from NECA. Nationwide security precondition for success. And now this is ascribed to Adonri. So you see all of that here this morning. So the new CBN, okay, well, whoever will be the new CBN governor, Mr. Is it Professor? Well, you just know that you've got your task ahead of you there in terms of how and what you need to do to get all of those things done. Then you also get to see 4.2 kilometer runway. FG votes 825.8 million naira to compensate Abuja indigents. Gombe shuts nightclubs over, quote, immoral activities. And besides, yesterday, guys, the Minister of Works was saying, look, any contractor who's not ready to use concrete, be ready for a fight. Because he says it's cheaper. He doesn't understand why they won't do that. It lasts a lot longer. So,
because more importantly, it saves us Forex.
So there you go.
That's
so if that's the case, well, who will not want us to save Forex?
No, but it'll be interesting to hear from the Nigerian Society of Engineers on what they think about this. Will there be a debate on it? Because I imagine that for many years we've used asphalt. In fact, you know, we're not familiar with many roads built with concrete unless we're talking bridges. It'll be very interesting to hear from the Nigerian Society of Engineers. Why have contractors or road builders over the years preferred the use of asphalt?
But the engineers have had little, not impacts, little
Impute?
of the, for want of words, because Julius Berger's, Dantata and Sawo, CCCEC, all of those chaps you see them almost everywhere. Those are the chaps who are doing a lot of these things. And now, the minister
but they
says,
still employ Nigerian engineers, don't they?
Yeah, but okay, maybe they could give us a backstory, but they don't take the major decisions in those companies. But if it is the case, that would be interesting. But we also need to subsequently pay attention to that story making the rounds about some NNPCL staff who are on the dispensing field. That would be criminal. Honestly, people are looking into that, though. So we'll hope to see what becomes of that at the end of the day. Okay.
Who is looking into it?
I can't disclose that, because if we do, they'll dodge. They'll see them coming.
Who's looking into? Because yesterday I bought petrol at an NNPC petrol station, and while I was buying, I was busy looking and saying, this hose is also very long. Are you sure they're not retaining 1 liter of my petrol in this hose?
Okay, well, NDPRA, please stand up, and then we'll get back to all of those. Okay.
Indeed, Chamberlain, we hope it's not just NNPC staff doing that. We hope other petrol stations are not doing that as well. And NMDPRA should go after them. Daily Trust is what I have next for you, and they're also talking about the flood alert. Despite flood alert, states yet to evacuate citizens. So it's instructive that despite the assurance provided by the NIHSA that citizens need to evacuate to safer places, and some of those three riders provide more insight. Rice farms submerged in Taraba. The consequences are coming. Residents vacate homes. NIWA, I believe that's a Waterways Authority, deploys boats for rescue operations. Build new locations for evacuation. Action Aid tells governors. And that tells you that the internally displaced persons camps, the IDP camps, the temporary shelters are going to be filled to the brim at this time. That's if indeed the citizens choose to evacuate. And we hope that relief materials also get to them. Let's go above the nameplate to see this one. NNPP factions differ over Kwankwaso's suspension, BOT chair's expulsion. There's also Nigerian equities beat 15-year record, hit 66,490 basis points. We're talking about internal displacement. Listen to this. 6 die, others injured as building collapses at Boronu IDP camp. Well, we thought that most of those IDP camps have been closed following the resettlement plan by the governor. It appears that, that may not be the exact case. But that's it for Daily Trust newspaper this morning, and indeed for the entire paper review segment. We're back in a moment to begin unveiling our plan for you this morning. So stay with us, don't miss out.
Long lines of legal practitioners and guests making their way into the velodrome of the Moshood Abiola Stadium in Abuja, venue of the 2023 Annual Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. Inside, there's barely any visible empty seat in sight in this massive arena, which is to accommodate more than 16,000 legal practitioners who registered to attend this conference. Also attending are ministers, several government officials and federal lawmakers. The guest of honor, President Bola Tinubu, arrives the venue with his entourage, kickstarting the event. With the emergence of a new administration after the general elections, the theme of the conference, Getting It Right, Charting the Course of Nigeria's Nation Building, is timely. The president of the Nigerian Bar Association notes that the conference is intended to galvanize lawyers to effectively play their role in nation building and set the agenda for the new administration.
It is our intention that at the end of this meeting, we would have set an agenda on behalf of the people of this country, which we would use as a basis of engagement with Your Excellency's administration for the purpose of providing empowerment, for the purpose of securing the people of this country, and for the purpose of achieving smooth administration of justice in our country.
Speaking of nation building, President Bola Tinubu does not mince words as he calls for a change of approach to governance and collaborative efforts between government and citizens to advance development.
It is a shame not to have electricity for the majority of homes in Nigeria. Yes, poverty. It's not a shameful thing, but not acceptable. We must banish it. Can we continue to service external debt with over 90% of our revenue? It's a path to destruction. We cannot continue that. We have to make hard decisions.
A captain of industry and philanthropist, Mr. Tony Elumelu, emphasizes the need for urgent investment in the youth and entrepreneurs to galvanize economic growth and development. On his part, the newly appointed Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mr. Lateef Fagbemi, promises to promote judicial reforms and the rule of law.
We need to renew our commitment to our youth. Provide them with the means to succeed in Nigeria and not beyond Nigeria. This means not just investment in our education system, which of course is important, but investment in our entrepreneurial culture.
With the general support of Mr. President, my ministry will dedicate its time and resources in the promotion of people-centered justice, in the implementation of the much-needed legal and judicial reforms.
Discussions at the conference would focus on three thematic areas of security, economy, and the administration of justice, which according to the NBA are interwoven and are elements responsible for the recovery and repositioning of the country. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
All right, welcome back. So several things on the burner here today. Yes, you heard the president there at the conference speaking about what needs to be done, how some of the steps he also intends taking. And incidentally, the 8-point agenda also included the rule of law. So we will come in at this point because the theme of that is NBA conference. We've got two gentlemen who are joining us to shed some light on that. Mr. Adebayo Joe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice for your state. Good morning.
Good morning.
And then we also do have Afamo Sigwe, also a Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Good morning to you as well.
Good morning.
Well, the conference, it's getting it right, charting the course for Nigeria's nation building. And the NBA says this was carefully thought out to reflect our current realities. So perhaps we'll start from that point, because this morning we woke up, came here with the news that a coup has gone on in Gabon, because they said that after the elections, it was contested, they were going to court, they didn't like how it was going on after 56 years. So some discontent there. It just goes to say, look, if people are not happy, something really needs to be done. So, Mr. Joe, from your perspective, having seen, I mean, in light of your theme, and the rule of law as well. We know this is important, but is there any chance whatsoever that a lot of the expectation we have about judiciary can materialize?
Yes. Okay, let me start from the rule of law. That is the bedrock of constitutional democracy anywhere in the world. And judiciary is very key and critical in the implementation of the rule of law. Yes. You see, I, myself, speaking for myself, don't agree with most of the narrative being thrown out there as far as judiciary is concerned in Nigeria, because people tend to look at it from the negative perspective, that judges are being neglected, they're not being taken care of, or this or that, which, from my own perspective, they are not true. They are not totally correct. Yes, we can do more, but painting or portraying that gloomy standpoint or position is not true.
They're not well paid.
They're not well paid. No,
why do you say that?
I don't agree. Like we already said, I was at General University between 2011 to 2015. Well, if I'm talking now, I'm talking from practical perspective, as opposed to most people who come and talk theoretically.
So give us a picture.
Yes.
Of what it was like.
You see, let me say this. If judges are not well paid, or if their conditions of such are too poor, as people are speculating, or as they are saying, there won't be any loss. Or once the vacancy is declared today, at any level, maybe at the High Court or at the Federal Court, Industrial Court, or calling for appointment of judges, if you look at the number of people, the applicants will be amazed. Will be amazed at the level at which lawyers are rushing to leave the bar for the bench.
What kind of figures did you have in your time?
No, it is amazing.
That doesn't speak to whether or not they are well paid. The fact that people, are rushing or they are interested in those positions doesn't speak to...
it shows that...
It might show something else. It might indicate something else. For instance, we know that in civil service, everybody knows how much. Well, maybe not everybody knows, but people have an idea.
Because of the high rate of unemployment.
Yeah, no, not the high rate of unemployment. People have an idea of just what the core civil servants earn. But people still want to work in civil service for a host of other reasons, not the pay.
What are the other reasons? Look, before I take up employment anywhere, I must have familiarized myself with conditions of justice in that sector. So I won't just get there now and start complaining.
Well, you haven't quite answered Chamberlain's question of the number of people, or an average number of people that rush in, as you said, to become judges. Yes. We have an idea of the number of people that want to become president of Nigeria, even though the pay isn't there. But what are the numbers that you can give us? At what rate would you say that happens? The number of people that want to become judges.
You see, let me give you an instance. I won't give you the exact figure, but I can tell you that.
How do you then get the understanding?
I can tell you that for every single slot, you have over 20 lawyers competing to get that slot. For a single slot, you have at least 20.
Irrespective of the level. Irrespective
High Court, State High Court, Federal High Court, Industrial Court.
Well, Mr. Osigwe seems to be disagreeing.
Yeah, but before he comes in, what other indicators are you using apart from the fact that lawyers are eager to want to become judges?
No, that's just to tell you that if, as you are saying now, that the conditions of service are poor or too bad, then why the rush?
I think
why the rush?
Okay.
I think that will not be taking a fair view of the situation by looking at the number of applicants. This job has to be done by somebody. And there are people who have a passion for something, and the fact that they go to do it does not suggest that they consider the pay good. Some people left well-paying jobs to become judges. But that does not detract from the fact that there is need to improve on the remuneration of judges. The Constitution says that the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Committee shall make a proposal which shall be passed by the National Assembly for payment of their salaries. The last time this was done was 2007. Successive governments had made promises about doing this. Now, when you don't pay such persons who do a critical job, like adjudication, settling disputes between people in a country like ours, indeed in any country, you don't pay them well. there's a danger that some untoward things may unwittingly creep into the system.
Such as?
Corruption. I mean, let's call it by bribery and corruption. Persons may be induced because they find themselves in situations where they cannot afford certain things. And by the nature of their job, they are not to do so many things like so many other public officers, and they are not to keep so many companies. Why the Constitution has restricted what a judicial officer may do to farming, by the code of their conduct for judicial officers, they can't do so many things. They can keep certain companies, they can't attend certain things. So there is need to somehow insulate them and protect them by reviewing their pay and ensuring that it is such as to reduce the likelihood of any person being induced.
I should ask pointed questions. How much are they earning? Because you say that yes, they are not as badly paid as people think.
They are not as badly paid. I also agree that there is need for review, just like other public servants. You see, the minimum wage used to be 18,000 naira for people in the public service or the civil service. Later, it was reviewed to 30, and now they are clamoring for 100. So, and it will go on and on like that. Let me say, judges' salaries are in two folds. The one from the NJC takes out their basic salary. And the state.
How much is that?
The state, I don't have the actual figure now.
When you were in government,
let me come to that. Then the state takes out the allowances, housing, medical, faction allowance, rope allowance, donor allowance, and what have you. But let me go and understand. When I was there in 2011, the rent that we pay our judges in the state was 300,000 per month. And you pay that upfront, which is 3.6 million per year. Or if a judge is living in government quarters, 20,000 will be deducted as the rent, because you are living in government quarters, you'll be paid 280,000 naira as your rent allowance, 280,000 naira per month for 12 months, for a year. Look at my point. And the issue now is this: if there is any maintenance of that house, it's also at the expense of the government takes up the maintenance of the house, of that quarters. Look at my point. So that's why I said it is not as that, it's not as bad as people are painting it. And again, once you are appointed as a judge, immediately upon being sworn in, when a judge has taken a sort of office, you get a key to your Prado Jeep. Or any other, yes.
That's a judge.
That's a judge.
And that's just a moment. And that's in Oyo State.
No.
And that's in Oyo State.
Is it in every state?
No, it is not.
That is in all. I'm just saying.
At the federal court.
I want you to confirm that is in Oyo State.
Oyo State.
And I think that our guest yesterday spoke from, talking about the judges, maybe not judges, magistrates, who administer.
Magistrates, their own conditions are just too bad. They are neglecting. Even judges are neglecting them. Just like judges are complaining that government, they are neglecting magistrates.
Who's responsible for them when you were in government?
The state government, Judicial Service Commissioner, but the chief registrar, being the account officer, together with the chief judge, take care of their welfare. It's what they present to the state government at the same time. But they don't even, it's like they don't reckon with them at all.
Okay. With what you had, when you were in government, Mr. Sibi, I'm coming back.
That's okay.
With what you had as an AGF in Oyo State at the time, speaking to the issues which we are all aware of, which Mr. Sibi just mentioned now, bribery and corruption, how vulnerable? What can you say that it put paid to instances of corruption and bribery when you were in government?
That's why I said we must not be theoretical. It's been theoretical. I'm talking from a practical perspective. I've been there, he has not. Get my point. Let me say this. Look, if you are being paid billions, if you are a corrupt woman, be a corrupt person, you will still cut corners. Look at NNPC. NNPCs, they are well paid. They are the best. As far as, if you look at the CBN, well, look at the level of corruption there. It is alarming and crazy. So, paying judges this salary or not, look, when I got to practice in 1993, the judges that I meant to grad them were given 504. Just 504. Later, he changed it for them to just 505. It was later that this is what Prado gave me. And those judges, then, how much were they earning? And they were the best. You can't compare them to judges that we have today.
I think
you can't compare what they are. their output, in fact, their character and everything, you can't compare to what we have today. So it's not about salary.
I think that's narrowing it down. The appointment process has increasingly got worse. So the caliber of person being appointed to the bench may largely account for what he's alluding to. It's been politicized. Politicians have a greater say in who gets appointed, at least.
Don't they lobby to become judges?
Now, precisely my point. The appointment process does not reflect a merit-driven system. And so it would be wrong to use the old appointment process where people were appointed on me. Sometimes, because of a person's performance, you will not even know the judges will refer you. And you may just say that you've been appointed a judge. Now people apply to judge, and a number of persons who are applying for judges respectfully are persons who may have failed in practice, or who some politicians may have said, who can apply, who can get you there. It's a different kettle of fish. And when we are talking about remuneration of judicial officers, we always focus on the Superior Court, High Court, Court of Appeal, and Supreme Court. The entry point, the magistracy, the customary courts, like he said, the situation is appalling. In many states, there's no thought of ever giving them a vehicle. Some arrive in courts in Okada. Some take buses with the same persons that are trying.
Judges?
Magistrates.
They don't even have any official quarters.
We've seen magistrates protest.
Yes.
I think in Cross River, we saw magistrates protest.
And sometimes their salaries and allowances are withheld by government. And some of these persons find their way into the High Court. Imagine the kind of persons who will now join the Superior Court. I'm not suggesting that the moment to pay them well, the issue of bribery and corruption will go away. But first of all, let us pay them well. And then, if there's issue of bribery and corruption, then we can rightly say there's no justification. And I'm not saying that not paying well also is a justification for it. But reduce the likelihood of certain things happening.
But Mrs.
Pay them well. So many judges, sorry, I understand, are not paid as well as some entry person.
Okay, because we're going to go there. Well, when he says that while he was there at the time, they received key to a brand new Prado Jeep.
We make you look as
your housing is taken care of.
That's such a big...
No, but the impression people have is that this was not even part of the deal. That's the impression some people have about
I wanted to talk about some of the things he mentioned that the states are paying them may not be constitutional. Some states are doing that to augment what they get because their salary really is fixed at the national level through the NJC. So the point is, and some of these things are not uniform. State Governor A may do and State Governor B may not do. Some people are giving this Prado and for the next 8 years, they don't get any other car. And I'm coming. And then you also talk about this Prado as if you've done them such a great thing. Sometimes these heavy vehicles also take their toll on their salary because most of the government gives you this and does not make any provision for the maintenance.
But they accepted it now.
Will you reject it? Will you not reject
it? Those cars
and they also make you
every 4 years.
Every 4 years.
You know, your state. I met some judges some weeks ago who told me that they are still driving the same cars they were given 8 years ago. And then some states are supposed to buy vehicles and show that they have them. And then when they're appointed, the vehicles are not given to them.
So when you say that we need to insulate the judiciary,
what
are the things that we need to do? I'm making that point advisedly because, first of all, is your theme, the theme of your conference, and then what Chamberlain also alluded to. If we are to insulate the judiciary, seeing that there are levels of authority and levels of judges. Levels of authority, I mean, there's a federal influence and then there's a state influence in their actions. And you may also take it to the customary and the magistracy and the rest of them. What do we need to do to insulate the judiciary, particularly judicial officers?
I think we need to look at judicial sector reform, which tackles the appointing process in the judiciary. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that a state like this or unit judges, they first apply to NJC, which will approve the number of judges they have, then they initiate the process at their Judicial Service Commission level, and then recommendations are made to Abuja, and persons who don't know the peculiarities of these people, don't know these individuals, pretend to conduct an interview, which, from publicly available evidence, does not involve more than a few questions being put to them, and then a decision is made, sometimes in not so clear manner as to whether it's merit-driven and then recommendations are made to the governor for appointment, you discipline them from here. We need to look at that. We need to also look at the composition of both the NJC and the JSC. I have always maintained that the process where the Chief Justice of Nigeria, it has nothing to do with who the particular individual who occupies the office, heads the Federal Judicial Service Commission, which makes recommendation for appointment into the federal courts, moves over to the NJC and presides over recommendations he has made. So he's chairman here, he's chairman there. And then he's also chairman of the
That's
NJC.
against the principle of natural what?
Well, I wouldn't want to, it's an administrative thing. So, but you may also bring that into it. But the point is, and then if you look at the composition of the NJC, yeah, we need to do a whole lot of judicial sector reform, which will also reduce the involvement of politicians in the appointment process and have a merit-driven process where people write exams and also have a mindset change. In Nigeria today, just give me a moment and I'll round up. In Nigeria today, it's taken that for you to go to the Supreme Court, you must have gone to the Court of Appeal, even when the Constitution did not say so or does not say so. It is seen as an elevation. And I keep telling people, I sometimes talk about it as, we look at it like it's a Ibadan chieftaincy thing, where the oldest chief becomes Olubado. I don't know, I hope it's still the same. The most senior chief, because not the oldest, the most senior chief. And so he's thinking that we must have been a presiding justice when the Constitution merely says he must be a person who has been a lawyer for, I think, 15 years post-call. And so it robs the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal of legal practitioners who are in private practice, who are in the academia, and who are in the other fields in the legal profession who can contribute. And we complain about so many things. So it doesn't matter whether by the time you're being taken from Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, you're very old and infirm, when you say, oh, from his own, he's the oldest. It is his turn to go. It's about turn. It is about, oh, how can you take his junior ahead of him? And I give an example. The Chief Justice of the of the United States, and don't tell me the US is different, was not even a justice of the Supreme Court, an associate justice, when he was appointed Chief Justice. And we must accept one fact. The appointment of a Chief Justice of a country is both a judicial appointment with and a political appointment.
Which raises the issue you raised the other time. Let me ask her. So what do you agree with him? Just do you agree with him? The issues about, insulating the judiciary?
Yes, I agree that we should insulate the judiciary.
How?
Yes. Like rightly said, the mode of appointment matters. In the time past, you don't apply to become judges. You don't. The judges on the bench and the senior lawyers will recommend you without your knowledge. They invite you. Look, I've seen the way you've comported yourself and you've handled your cases. Can't you join? We want you to come and join us on the bench. But we've done away with that. Now, we've thrown it open now. That what you need is at least 10 years at the bar. You may not even be in legal practice. You may not even be in active legal practice. You can be working in a bank if you're a lawyer. You can be, yes, it has happened.
So how do they expect to get to
people who have never settled pleadings in their life have become judges. They've never settled pleadings, and they're not judges, they're not on the bench. So how do you expect such a judge to be able to adjudicate in the best manner? Then also again, apart from that mode of appointment, that is very important. Knowledge, character, the two must coexist. And he talked about interference by politicians and all that, which I don't agree with that as well. I don't. I was vice chairman of GSC 2011-2015, and we appointed 11 judges in 2 branches, 6 first, then 5 later. And I can say it, I've been my chair to say that my governor did not even have any input. He didn't call us.
Would you say others don't? Other governors don't?
Look, then is it the fault of governor? If members were there, if you would turn it down, you will refuse. You tell him, we need to appoint the best.
Let's bring in Bookie.
Chamberlain, it's interesting to listen to you, and the advocacy resounds, whether it's at the level of the judges or at the level of the NBA. Speaking of which, on our sister program just days ago, the NBA president disclosed that a Supreme Court judge's salary is somewhere in the realm of, this goes to you now, Mr. Osigwe, is somewhere in the realm of 700,000 naira, and this is miserly, you know, considering the current economic realities. But the question is, what do you think would be enough that would insulate the judiciary from corruption and from the interference of politicians? Mr. Osigwe.
I agree that the 700,000 is a far cry from what a justice of the Supreme Court should get. But asking me to suggest what would be fair enough would be somewhat unfair to me. I'm not an economist, but a whole number of factors would have to be taken into consideration in determining that. And I think that's why the Revenue Mobilization and Allocation Committee has that responsibility. You have to look at the purchasing power of the Naira and a whole lot of other factors in determining that. So I would leave that to the right persons, but suffice it to say that we agree that the amount being paid it's pathetic and ought to be reviewed and increased. Many persons who have entry jobs in some organizations, I don't know how much they pay in CBN and all that, may actually be any more than these justices of the Supreme Court you have referred to. And we all agree that in the Nigeria of today, that shouldn't be. And if you even take it, that is less than $1,000, if I'm not mistaken. Less than $1,000. So imagine your justice of the Supreme Court being paid something in the neighborhood of maybe $800 or $900. And we agree that shouldn't be.
But Mr. Osigwe,
but I'm also not so... Yes, please.
If we agree without conceding that it's not enough, you have acknowledged that, you know, the appointment of judicial officers, and that would be Supreme Court justices inclusive, is both a judicial and a political appointment. And if that is the case, do judicial officers have any reason whatsoever, you know, to be influenced by both, you know, politicians, you know, and any other person who may want to influence, you know, their decision or ruling on any matter? Do they have any excuse in the first place?
Now, by the oath of their office, it doesn't matter who appointed them or what interest that person may be, or what ideological viewpoint may have influenced their appointments. It is taken that once you're appointed, whatever affiliation we had with the appointing authority ends. And when I talk about being a political thing, it could be in countries like the US, where you have the Democratic Party appointed judges and the Republican appointed judges. So it's taken that the Republicans will appoint conservative judges whose views on certain issues are known, while Democrats will appoint persons who are liberals who will do certain things. That's the point I made about being political. In Nigeria, unfortunately, we don't have such things. And the FJC is there to ensure that it is somewhat politicized. But I believe that for heads of courts, it could be a bit different. But that's the discussion for another day. And when we talk about insulation, I'm not suggesting that they need to be insulated from only politicians. They should be insulated from family members and even from co-judicial officers, because a head of court can interfere with the independence of a brother judge or justice. And other justices who are not the heads of court could also do that. So there is the personal independence and the institutional one and a whole number of independence we're talking about. So insulating them would entail appointing right persons who will have fidelity to their oath of office and not be influenced by facts other than the law, or the matters other than the facts and the law in determining cases. And cases, an assignment of cases should be done in a transparent manner that do not also show judge shopping, forum shopping, or a deliberate assignment of case to a person whose views are known or who would decide in certain manners. So this conversation goes wider than suggesting that interference with their independence comes only from outside. It can come from within. It can come from the practitioners, lawyers who appear before these judges, or from family members.
Let me come to you now, Mr. Ojo. Former President Muhammadu Buhari had, signed some amendments that put the judiciary on the first-line charge, and one would have thought that that would sufficiently lay to rest some of the agitations from that arm of government, reminiscent of the time of strikes when judiciary workers went on strike. Putting the judiciary on the first-line charge financially, we wonder why that hasn't solved much of the problems of infrastructure within that arm of government. It's been some months after that. Why do we still hear stories about courtrooms, walls caving in on, judges while they're doing their jobs?
Thank you so much for that question. You see, we are isolating judiciary from the general problems we have in this country. It is Nigerian judiciary. Just like you have the rot in the agri sector, in the aviation, in the banking, we have that rot in the judiciary as well. So it is not only in the judiciary. I think that's our lot in this country. That the way we do our things, how do I put it now? It's like we are a different species of human beings. What does it take to improve infrastructures in the judicial sector? What does it even take to improve or rehabilitate schools where our children are being educated? So we should not isolate the problem in the judiciary alone. But, and let me say this now, we have a new Attorney General of the Federation, Prince Lateef Fagbemi. All of us, and I've not seen any exception, all of us in the justice sector, either from the bar or on the bench, all of us agree that the present government has gotten it right with that appointment. It's a fitting appointment. And we are expecting that with him in the saddle, things are going to improve tremendously. As far as the justice sector is concerned, things are going to improve.
Well, we hope so, Mr. Ojo, because reports suggest that there is...
I have no doubt about that.
Reports suggest that the structure within the judiciary is such that there is always a court administrator in the court structure, so to speak, who handles every other matter apart from the legal matters that the lawyers and the judges are supposed to handle. If that administrator is not empowered to carry out, to execute infrastructure reforms within the judicial sector, isn't this suggestive of the fact that the leadership of the judiciary is also interested in executing infrastructure reforms within the judiciary rather than concentrating solely on legal matters?
Let me say this. Judiciary too needs to prioritize their needs. They should focus more on how to develop the system rather than going after frivolities. And let me give you an example. I think, was it about 4 years ago, justices of the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court were taken to Dubai for a seminar. The title of that seminar was how to take evidence. How to take evidence. Do they take evidence in the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court? Those training were meant to be for judges of the lower bench, those on the High Court. So they should also get it right. Look at my point. If they are judicious in the fund that are being allocated to them too, I believe things are going to be better, rather than expending what they have on frivolities and things that will not improve their lot of the system at all.
You're concerned that a lot of well, it is very important. I mean, the economy and the economic power of our judicial officers is very important. But that cannot be all that is, concerned with the rule of law. Yep. What other areas are you looking at to seeing? Because some people have also said that a lot of burden is also being placed on this new Attorney General. But he is the one who said that he intends to uphold the rule of law. So for him to actually live up to it, and for you to also agree that he's lived up to it, what other, indicators would you be looking at?
Thank you. You see, the problem in the judicial sector is systemic. And I will explain. We have high courts. For example, now, for your state, we have high courts. We have about 30 of them, 30 judges, many of our high courts. In the same Oyo state, we have federal courts, 2 judges there, making 32. We have industrial court there, 2 judges, making 34. Ogun State also has equal number, or if not more.
And so, I guess in almost all the states.
Yes.
Okay?
So we are talking about 8 judges now, throwing out different judgments. But the appeal from all those courts, we come to one court of appeal. Look at my point. One court of appeal dealing with judgment from over 80 courts. You can see it is. Whereas we have one court of appeal, how will they handle and determine that? And people will be complaining there's delay in the process. Why won't there be delay?
So you think he can do something in that regard?
He can do something. That is to say we need more court of appeals.
Do you think he can do it without touching the Constitution?
No. It's administrative.
Okay.
For example, now, in your state now, the court of appeal that we have, they have 2 courtrooms. Only one has been used. Only one court.
So
why can't they have 2 panels? Or even more? Oh, and that means more judges must be appointed at every level of court. If we are the High Court, we need more. And they need also to create more divisions of court so that there will be access. When we were there, we used to have Ibadan division, Oyo, Ogbomoso, and Ibarapa. Just 4 of them. But you now expect somebody from Iseyin, which is about 1 hour to Oyo, to be taking his matters or dispute to Oyo. Then we said, look, let's also have a court in Iseyin that can take. We created more divisions, and we need more so that we can improve or expand access to justice, which is even better.
All right, Mr. Oshigwe.
I think I will take a different view.
Okay.
About having more divisions. It's not about more divisions. A region that used to be the Western region now has a Court of Appeal division in Lagos, in Ibadan, in Ado-Ekiti, in Akure, and Benin. That's 5. I think we should rather focus on the types of cases that get to the appellate court, especially the Supreme Court. Why would a tenancy matter that started in Iseyin, for example, in the magistrate court in Iseyin, find its way to the Supreme Court of Nigeria? Why would a chieftaincy matter in Iseyin that involves no constitutional law issue find its way to the Supreme Court in Nigeria? I think we should talk about that. Talking about what that Attorney General can do. I believe I read in the report that during his confirmation hearing at the Senate, he talked about looking into the propriety of having EFCC and having ICPC and some other agencies. I think that's a conversation we should be bold enough to sit down and have. And part of that conversation would also include the EFCC investigate and prosecute. Part of the judicial reforms, I also think the Attorney General should look at the bail process we have in Nigeria. It has become extortionary, unless we don't want to tell ourselves the truth.
So it's not free as they say it is.
Why would a police station struggle to convince you that they're your friend and put up stickers that bail is free if it was not otherwise? We should look at a system that allows law enforcement agencies to simply pick you up, clamp you into detention, and start fishing for evidence. We should look at that section of Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which has now been incorporated in many of the Administration of Criminal Justice laws of the states, that allows the magistrate without any form of hearing to simply sign a detention order, which will be renewed without you being given a hearing to challenge the propriety of renewing it. We should challenge a system that seems to derive pleasure from depriving you of your personal liberty by putting you in detention to break you or to punish you. That does not make room for a judge to entertain bail hearing, either ex parte or electronically, that has this long process of, my lord, we have just been served, we need 10 days to respond, well, the rule says this. Issues of personal liberty. We need to look at the propriety of judges continuing to impose ridiculous bail conditions on people.
What determines those conditions, though?
Well, the judges, they look at so many factors, and they simply say, and for example, one of the ways of ensuring that a bail granted you cannot be immediately enjoyed is to say you must have one of the shorties was a person who has a property. Then you go through the administrative rigors of getting that property confirmed, and we'll be tied you if that property has no record at the land registry. And no law as yet in Nigeria says that all property must have a record at the land registry. We must look at a system that allows a judge to simply say, your shorty must be a civil servant, a PAMSEC. And this has thrown up a black market in the bail industry where civil servants who have never had any contact, who don't know the suspect.
Did you say bail industry?
Black market. Let's say the truth. There's a black market in the bail industry.
Is it that those bail
the bail conditions are imposed, and there are agents in court waiting for you once the judge has made that pronouncement to facilitate the provision of those persons for a fee.
What happens to the fee?
I've not collected this, I wouldn't know. But these individuals charge you a fee, and they'll ask you, what is your offense? With which you're charged? And then they will charge you based on that. So I would say that if we don't simplify these processes, it's a huge joke. It's a huge joke. And so many sections of our laws don't work. The Attorney General should, in my thinking, focus on policing, how policing is carried out in Nigeria. The abuse of enforcement agencies like the DSSS in getting detention order under the Terrorism Act, and even in charging people. It has become commonplace now for the police. Once there is any element of maybe any allegation of terrorism, it doesn't matter whether the facts are contained in proof of evidence, and the allegation comes from, say, Anambra, they will charge you to court in Abuja to punish you because that law says you can be charged anywhere. We must look at a whole lot of factors because our administration of criminal justice is such that people are losing confidence in it, and people are willing to pay anything to secure the freedom of their people without going to court. And it doesn't matter whether they know that they are innocent. That's why innocent or guilty. And family members are willing to pay anything just to get away from trouble. And that's why I say it has become extortionary. And we should focus on this because at the end of it is about perception. How does a person who is being taken to the police station feel? They feel apprehensive. They feel that they're in danger. They feel that they're in a very hostile environment where their life could be lost. And Nigeria is such a bad place that you can be taken to a police station, nobody knows where you're taken to. Nobody's informed about the fact that you're there. Go to so many police stations. There are people who have been in their cells for years. And yet the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has provisions that such things should not happen. Magistrates should visit them. And there are reports of magistrates being refused entry into those cells.
Indeed.
And some even threatened with arrest. Who does that? Where does that happen?
Okay. Well, Mr. Ojo, you can comment on this one because, I mean, yes, the president did list his 8-point agenda, which included the rule of law. But even yesterday, while we spoke about this matter, partly the SAN did tell us that, look, he had persons who wanted to invest in the country, which is part of what the president also wants to do to boost the economy. And the part of the question was, how long does it take to get judgment or justice on a particular case, maybe at the Appeal Court or Supreme Court? And when they heard that when they heard it was really high, they left and went to another country. So yes, rule of law may be part of this agenda, but the economy also, yes, it means all of this are interwoven. Can we make any headway if we don't get it right at this level?
We cannot. And that's the truth. We must get it right. Because no serious investor want to come to any country where they know the judicial process is not to write home about. And that's the present state of the judiciary in this country. Not of the justice sector in this country, because it takes quite a long, frustrating time to get your dispute resolved. If our arbitration is not working, because after the awards, you still come back to court to enforce it, and you start another journey from there to Supreme Court. That is not done anywhere in any seriousness other than in Nigeria. And that's why we said a lot of reforms need to be introduced by the Present Attorney General, which is there. So he's capable. Mr. Lateef Fagbemi can do all of that. We must start, even from the basic, like our judges writing long hands. Look, go to any state of assembly, any parliament, be it the state or at the national level. Look at them, you just see them as if they are playing or doing drama. But all their all their proceedings, immediately they finish, they get them. Because they have verbatim recorder in the parliament. If they have that in the legislative houses, why can't we have it? Must it be difficult? Why did it take judiciary so long a time to do all that? If they be able to do that in the parliament, that's why I said most of the blame we put at the doorstep of the government or of the executive. They are not made for them. If the judiciary tweet, they are part and parcel of their own problems.
How?
Look, okay, why is that difficult to do?
He's right.
Is it difficult? It's not difficult. Very simple, what do I call it? It's simple technology.
What needs to happen? Because, I mean, Jim and I, recalled how we went to court
have to get it right.
Well, what is so difficult? Well, why is it so difficult to put such a simple technology in place?
Because, no, let me tell you.
The request that did be switched off.
No, the reason is this. No,
yes.
No,
some judges have it and say if they don't trust that recording, they only trust their own recording.
Most of them are analog. And
some
again,
can't operate a computer.
They can't. No, the problem is more complicated than what people see on the surface. Look, is that device is not something big. It's not a rocket science.
Do you think it should be a prerequisite that if you can't use technology, you shouldn't be a judge going forward?
I think so.
In this century, it must be.
Unfortunately, there's a pushback. There was and I'm not going to mention it, but I was told that one of the, I don't know whether to call it appointment process or recruitment process for judicial officers of a certain court in Nigeria. And the guideline was that there should be a computer-based test. And those who were seeking to appoint, they protested. Wow. And the debate was taken at the higher level of the body that would do the process. And they directed that process be cancelled, that a judge must not be compelled to be computer literate.
In this day and age?
Yes.
Yes. And it was cancelled.
Is that bad?
Wow. So we are saying essentially that the road to justice reform is a very slow one.
And the system is resisting that change.
It doesn't want to change.
Which system is reducing it? The judicial system itself?
Yes. The judicial system itself. So who that's why
who would you recommend?
Well, once the judge has given judgment, they have 7 days.
Yeah, just a moment.
Sometimes it takes weeks.
Yeah, if you have been...
Because they say, my Lord is reviewing
just a moment, Mr. Sigwe.
He's going back for editing. You can't get a judgment. What the Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, once a judgment is delivered,
it's online immediately.
It doesn't happen here.
It's online immediately.
One of the courts that has implemented it to the admiration of all lawyers is National Industrial Court. And I don't know why other courts find it difficult to imbibe that. Many courts launch with what they call e-filing. It's not an e-filing, it's an e-scanning.
Okay. Well, we need to wind down this. So let me ask both of you, if you were to advise the AGF, one key thing that he has to do almost immediately to probably kickstart, quote unquote, getting it right or getting the judiciary in good stead, what would it be?
Yes, we must do away with long and record of proceeding by judges. It must be totally done away with. It is archaic. In this age and
can he make that law across board?
Across board, in all levels of court, all levels of court. And maybe for a start, they can start with the High Court. You can start with the High Court.
What do you think?
Well, I think any Attorney General, and I expect that from the current Prince Latif Agbemi and the current Attorney General of the Federation, to focus on justice sector reform that improves access to justice and focuses on enforcement of judgments. Rights are routinely being violated in Nigeria. Judgments obtained against security agencies that can never be enforced. And the Attorney General should pay attention to it because it is giving people less incentive to approach the courts where their rights are violated.
Okay. Wait, I see somebody wants to know, what happens to the funds or the funds for the bail when they are paid?
They are not paid. I'm talking about a black market. It is those who participate to provide either surety or some other guarantees that make this one. So it's a business.
You don't get this question.
Which man?
When the court said you are admitted to bail in the sum of...
No, it doesn't require any money. It's just a bond.
Just a bond.
So you give the bond.
That if this man should go away and you can't find him, you forfeit it to the government. You go after this 40. The money is not paid.
All right, Mr. Debajo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice for your state, and Afa Mosigwe, also a Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
We're back in a moment. Stay on with us.
Passionate about changing your country for the better? Do you think you can make this change with a profitable business? Here's your chance to win a grant of 30 million naira, mentorship from an industry expert, and access to an exclusive network of business leaders. We are looking for ambitious, dedicated social entrepreneurs to take part in our exciting new business competition show, Fund It Forward. To apply, go to www.funditforward.tv. Fund It Forward, a Channels original series.
The Peace Lazuli Ministries presents its 10th annual conference, Kingdom Intervention Conference 2023. Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired? Are you ready to break every limitation in your life? One word from the Lord can change your world. Kingdom Intervention Conference 2023, a healing and prophetic conference. Ministering Veteran, Dr. Randy Clark and Bill Johnson. Ministering Live, Dr. Tom Jones, Catherine Ronala, and Charity Cook. Date, Thursday, 31st August to Saturday, 2nd September 2023. Time, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Venue, Crispin Hotel Event Center, Rayfield, Jos Plateau State. Also, you can stream online at www.lapislm.org. Viewing centers are available in Lagos, Abuja, Kaduna, and other cities around you. Register now at www.lapislm.org. For inquiries, call +234 703 437 1401. Come and experience God's unfailing love.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Ikeja. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser. Or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Channels Television, ubiquitous.
Well, we've been setting the agenda for the judiciary and perhaps by extension the Attorney General of the Federation. But right now we're switching gears to a position that no one has been appointed to yet. People are still looking at who will the president make the Minister of Youth. It's interesting that it's now been taken away from the Ministry of Sports. So the minister who was there, or before now, it used to be the Ministry of Youth and Sports, or Sports and Youth as the case might be. But now, it's now a separate entity by itself. Don't forget that before now, there had also been protests. I think somebody was appointed there. People said, oh, isn't he 60 years old? But hey, we understand that, you know, that person has now been moved to another ministry and that position has been left vacant. Now, whilst we're hoping that somebody else will be appointed there and the person will be very conversant with what the youths want, let us speak with somebody who still, I shall say, identify as young. Don't we all? On this table, Risola Abiola is the president of the Progressive Sisters Network, a member of the All Progressives Congress. I think he used to be a member of the BOT. Has it been reconstituted?
We were appointed, but it was never really inaugurated. Essentially, people were appointed to the Board of Trustees, but the inauguration never actually took place. That was quite a while ago.
Okay, so we'll just say that you're a member of the All Progressives Congress and also a youth and gender advocate. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So what were your initial reactions when you heard that the president had appointed somebody to that particular ministry who was not exactly a youth, who was in his 60s from what we understood?
Essentially, for those of us who are in the youth demography, there's been that advocacy for quite a while for the ministry to be manned by somebody who actually does fall within the youth age bracket. Now, in advanced countries, usually some of them would say youth is between 16 to 24, some would extend it to 29, some 30. In Nigeria, I believe it used to be 35, the national youth policy. Some countries would probably put it at 40. But because of the economic realities in the different countries, we're not able to define youth the same way. In the West, for instance, you would expect that once you turn 18, you're able to live on your own to fend for yourself. But that's usually not the case with most young people in this part of the world. There's been advocacy on for quite a while for the ministry to be headed by somebody who actually does fall within the youth demography. And the reason is because we feel that as young people, heading that ministry, essentially, the duties, the responsibilities is about managing the agitations of young people. And it helps when it's somebody who looks like them, somebody who speaks like them, somebody who can communicate like them, somebody that can relate to the issues and the concerns of young people. So there were quite a number of people who were not too happy with the fact that the person who had been assigned to that ministry was way beyond the youth bracket. But that's essentially what has always happened. But then the president, as a listening leader, we also had agitations from people from the South-South region saying, we need a ministry for the Niger Delta, and we don't think this should be off the table. And the president has shown, since he took over the reins of power, that he listens to feedback and is very mindful about taking decisions that the people will be happy with. Essentially, it's a democracy, and you have to listen to your people. So that was why I believe there was a minor reshuffle of the cabinet prior to ministers being inaugurated, and the person who had previously been designated as Minister for Youth was then reassigned to the Niger Delta Ministry. Now, when that happened, we also saw a change in the person designated to handle the Ministry for Blue Economy and Transportation as well. And then when that happened, the initial statement was that the Ministry of Youth would be reassigned to one of the ministers who had been appointed. So when ministers were inaugurated and the Minister of Youth was not named, and the ministry was actually not reassigned during that process, young people across the country, both within the party and outside the party system, began to agitate for those that they believe are up to the task to be appointed as the Minister for Youth. So as it is presently, young people believe that the sport remains open. If it's going to be merged with yet another ministry, there's been no indication regarding that. And I think the fact that it's been separated from sports to begin with and that it was designated, set aside on its own, kind of gives an idea that what the administration wants is for that ministry to act on its own and to focus solely on issues that have to do with youth development. So young people are anticipating, we're wondering who it is that's going to represent us in the Federal Executive Council.
The challenge would be to even know what the agenda would be for whoever would be that. So youth development, whatever.
I don't mean to interrupt your question, but I want to quickly finish. I had a follow-up. Yeah, I always find it a bit concerning when people say, oh, well, it's only trite that, if you're talking about young people, you shouldn't have a conversation without them being there. Mm-hmm. But when they say a ministry must be headed by somebody in that bracket, you have to ask whether these people have the requisite experience, what it would take to man a ministry, for instance. Why must it be somebody who is within you're looking at somebody between 18 and 35? Is that what you're looking at?
Ideally, so this is Nigeria, as I said earlier. Ideally, we think any age range from early 30s to perhaps 40 or early 40s at most, as long as they can relate to the conditions of young people, they can communicate with young people, they look the part, they sound like it, I believe it should be ideal. So preferably anything from early 30s to perhaps 40 at most, I think would be ideal.
Would you be concerned about whether or not they have the experience?
Okay. So in response to that question, I would say it's a tad discriminatory to simply assume that because a person is young, then it means they don't have the required experience to head a ministry. Dr. Betta Edu is presently the youngest member of the Federal Executive Council. She was commissioner in Cross River State. Before then, she had held a number of positions in public service as well. There is no shortage of young people within the APC who have experience, whether it's within public service, within the civil society. Many of us actually started out with youth activism, youth civil society organizations, voluntary youth organizations, before then transitioning to mainstream politics as members of the party now. And even if the president chooses to look beyond the party, which he has a right to, he's president for all of Nigeria, not just for APC members or APC youths alone. So if the president chooses to look beyond the party, there are a number of young Nigerians within, say, 30 to 40 or even early 40s who have done exceptionally well in their respective fields, could be in the private sector. A lot of Nigerians are doing really well in different fields, and they're really young. And manning a ministry is more about the administrative responsibilities. And now let's take a look at the youth ministry itself. Presently, now that the sport component has been taken out, the youth ministry now has the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, and the Citizenship Leadership Training Center, which I think we popularly refer to as MANOWAR, as the parastatals under it at the moment. So those are the two agencies under it. And I think, tying into the question that he also asked, I think I'll answer that as I go along, about setting an agenda for the youth ministry. The first thing that I think we need to be mindful of, especially as young people, is the fact that it's not just about heading a ministry or being minister or just having a young person occupy the position. Whoever it is also has to understand that they have the responsibility of properly communicating the vision, the ideals, the mission of this government to young people, and ensuring that they take the feedback from the youth demography back to the president. Nigeria's youth make up the bulk of our population. Depending on what sources you're looking at, they would either put it between 62% to 70% of the population, which is entirely constituted by young people. And this means both young men and young women, people within the 18 to 35 age bracket. If we take that and extend it to 40, we have an even bigger chunk of the population. So what this president is supposed to do, aside just the issue of managing parastatals or just, supervising the work that is done in the Ministry of Youth, we also have to understand that there are lots of opportunities that can be explored for young people. Take the Ministry of Women Affairs, for instance. They have a lot of work that they do in collaborating with development agencies because, women are a very special demography. There's a lot of attention all over the world when it comes to building the capacity of women, empowering women. They're able to use this to actually partner with development agencies. And I don't see any reason why the Ministry of Youth Development will not be able to do the same thing. And I think actually taking the Ministry for Youth Development and separating it from the Ministry of Sports is a stroke of genius in the sense that prior to now, without prejudice to any of those who were appointed to head that ministry, prior to now, in its previous form, the Ministry of Youth and Sports concentrated a lot more heavily on the sports component of their mandate, because that was where a lot of things were happening. But now that the Ministry of Youth gets to stand alone, we have to be very innovative in how that ministry is managed. If we look at our recent history, youth agitations have shaped recent developments in Nigeria's landscape. We look at the NSAS agitations. We look at the 2023 election cycle. A lot of those who happen to be disillusioned with the current political system are young people. And that's why, for instance, Labour Party was able to attain the kind of mass that they did. Most of their supporters are young people. They had issues with the establishment political parties, in their opinion. And the challenge actually wasn't that government wasn't doing the best that it could to actually prioritize youth affairs. The Ministry of Youth and Sports, for instance, then launched the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund. There were quite a number of other initiatives targeted at young people. But at the same time, I think we've always had a challenge with being able to properly communicate these things in a way that our young people will probably understand. We need to be able to meet young people where they are, to be able to speak to them in ways that they understand, to be able to listen to them. Because another challenge with young people, a major agitation with people in my generation is we feel like we talk, but we're not really being listened to.
Perhaps
and we feel like...
My apologies. Perhaps because the communication between the two generations, they're speaking different languages altogether. I've had engagements with public service officials in a particular state, and guess what? Before a young person who is in charge of the social media in that particular ministry could put out anything for young people of his own age and in their language, he had to go through levels of authority you know, that do not understand that language and do not understand their approach. So tailing back to the question Mark asked about experience, it's not just, it's the minister that is going to be seen, like the body of a car, like the headlamps of a vehicle. But the engine, no one sees it. And that's what, you know, drives the vehicle. That's what makes the vehicle move. So no one is going to see the ministry. No one is going to see the directors who is probably in his 60s and many other officials who do not speak young people's language and have to report, the people at the base have to report to people who don't understand their language in order for the job of the minister to be seen. And that communication that you are talking about. So how do we navigate that? How does that minister navigate that conundrum? Because if that engine is not moving, that car ain't going nowhere.
So I would like to say that in response to that, first, what the president has demonstrated since being sworn into office and even during the campaigns was that he's somebody who really does value youth inclusion. And if we look at the cabinet, there are some strategic positions where we have relatively young people. Dr. Betta is about 36, I believe. Honorable Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo is about 41. The Honorable Minister for Digital Economy, Dr. Bosun Tijani, is in his 40s. He also has a lot of work that he's done in the tech sector. Speaking about experience, particularly for young people, and then, of course, many of the president's aides, his special assistants, senior special assistants, the young people as well. Now, speaking about experience in perhaps public service or maybe the private sector, as I said earlier, there is no shortage of qualified young people. If we're looking at within the party structure, I wouldn't want to start naming names, but I have seen resumes of quite a number of our people in the APC, young progressives, who are qualified in every sense of the word. And we have young people who can man this ministry from virtually every region of this country. If it's about youth politics, actually understanding youth movements and youth politics, many of us, as I said earlier, transitioned from that background into mainstream politics. If it's about experience in public service, many of us have worked in different roles in government. If it's about experience in the private sector, apart from our political activities, many of us are also professionals in our respective fields. And I think that's one thing that Nigerians generally don't seem to perhaps understand about people who are actively involved in politics. They talk a lot about technocrats, you know, without realizing that a lot of politicians are technocrats as well in their own right. And when I speak about communication, sorry, please. When I speak about communication, I'm saying that young people, they're very particular about this ministry, for instance, because it has a tag that says Ministry for Youth Development. You have a Ministry for Women Affairs. Everybody expects that it's a woman who is appointed there. You have a Ministry for Youth Development. Young people expect that somebody who falls within the youth category, who can really be defined as a youth, should be the one to head it. So if you appoint a man as Commissioner for Women Affairs in a state, for instance, there's going to be an uproar. Some states have done it, and it was, you know, it earned them widespread condemnation for doing such a thing. So it's like these spaces have been specifically assigned to these people, and now young people are saying that they are hoping that this time around, especially now that it seems that fresh appointments will most likely be made, that this time around it is somebody who is truly young, somebody who they can trust to actually safeguard and protect youth interests, somebody who understands that it goes beyond just overseeing the parastatals attached to that ministry, and actually has the capacity and the political will to set an agenda and build a new youth ministry, a solid new youth ministry, make significant achievements in that role that subsequent ministers for youth development can then build upon. And for me, as a party member, for those of us who are within the party, we also hope that it is somebody who can actually contribute meaningfully, add value to the president's agenda for youth development, because it's something that he's also very keen on. He was very particular about that during the campaign, and he's been very particular about that as well as president.
Buki has got some questions for you. Go ahead, Buki.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain. Good morning from Lagos. You know, your arguments are quite convincing, but then again, some of the politicians within your party who fall within the older age bracket could argue that, you know, age is of the mind, and, you know, an older person within an older age bracket can also be young at heart and connect with the young people. But that's another matter entirely. You've talked about, some of the work that the Ministry of Women Affairs does with development partners that also borders on, matters that affect young people. I'm wondering what your thinking is of where the new minister that will be appointed for the ministry, now that it has been separated from the Ministry of Sports, what levels he or she can engage with young people, because there's so many issues that affect young people when it has to do with mental health, sexual and reproductive health, sexual and gender-based violence. What are those levels of engagement that you think is possible, the potentials and the prospects, that can help solve these issues, and such that it will not overlap with the Ministry of Women Affairs, and poverty alleviation, I believe?
Okay, so in speaking about the work being done at the Ministry of Women Affairs, I actually made an example with how they're able to partner with development agencies to push for sometimes funds or interventions in certain areas that have to do with women specifically. Now, for young people, as you rightly noted, there are a myriad of challenges that young Nigerians are facing. In different regions of the country, we have issues with drug addiction, for instance. Our students across tertiary institutions, especially the female students, they speak often of harassment and being compelled to do things that they normally wouldn't, by people who are in positions of authority and should not be taking advantage of them in such a manner. We have issues with skills, digital skills, empowerment, economic empowerment. And I made an example earlier with the Nigerian Youth Investment Fund that was launched during the last administration, the first of its kind, really, from the ministry, if I'm not mistaken. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of work that will be done by whoever is appointed Minister for Youth that will actually have bits and pieces of work being done in other places. For instance, if you're going to tackle the drug abuse epidemic, I would envisage that whoever it is that's appointed Minister for Youth would explore collaborations and partnerships with perhaps the Ministry of Information and National Orientation. They could partner with the National Orientation Agency, for instance, to come up with behavioral change communication programs on the dangers of drug abuse, knowing how to communicate with our people regarding that specific issue. They should be able to influence the decisions that are made in other places. They should be able to engage extensively for the sake of young people. And then we also look at things like skill acquisition, economic empowerment. A lot of that is being done in the Ministry for Digital Economy, but there are ways that partnerships can be explored and alliances can be formed. And it would actually help the ministry for you to also be able to influence how these things are done. And there are other projects that could be domiciled within the ministry itself. And this is where development agencies come in. So anyone who has experience with public service and with governance understands that the major challenge of government is not actually the lack of willpower to get things done, is that we have financial constraints. So usually, sometimes if a person in charge of an agency is resourceful enough, when budgetary constraints exist, what I think would have to be done is you look at the president's agenda for youth development. You look at the key performance indicators that are set for whoever it is that emerges Minister for Youth Development. And then you look at areas of concern for development agencies that are working within the country or within the continent. And then you find areas of convergence, and then you can engage those development agencies on those issues so that you can get support from them. That's why they exist, and they're actually really usually very willing to do good work to support causes that they believe in. So sometimes it's not just about the budgetary allocation that is made available to a ministry or to an agency. There are also other avenues that can be pursued to be able to get things done in certain regards. I also see collaborations and partnerships with perhaps the Ministry of Arts, Culture, and the Ministry of Arts and Culture. We have a lot of young Nigerians doing really well in that space as well. So definitely, I'm looking forward to collaborations between both ministries in future. I can also think about education. I can think about quite a number of other ministries that I think their work could intersect occasionally. And it's very key that we have somebody who understands that you know, that there is a whole lot that can be done with that ministry just beyond what we have and what we see on paper, and that there's work to be done in actually building a formidable youth ministry that can deliver on Mr. President's vision for youth development in Nigeria.
You do not see, you know, the challenge of the multiplicity of agencies going after the same issues there. But I'd like to manage my time to ask another question. You can answer that, you know, in the course of this. How important is it for a young youth minister to intervene politically in the area of political participation for young people, particularly when it comes to electioneering times, which is when there's a lot of advocacy for the huge financial demands, you know, placed on interested politicians, which is a point of disqualification for many Nigerian youths?
So I would say that I and quite a number of other members of the youth wing of the party have actually been at the forefront of working for, would I say, a saner climb financially for political involvement. And our party has recognized the need to support young people. During the last election cycle, there were waivers for young people below a certain age. We had our stakeholders of the party really push for that. One of them was the then Speaker of the House, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, who actually really pushed for that, and we were able to get that scale through. And as Minister for Youth now, the work of a youth minister is different from the work of a national youth leader of a party. So I believe that a Minister for Youth would have to engage more broadly to ensure that young people generally across political parties have a better chance of emerging as candidates. And I think we need a two-pronged approach. The first is through engagements with political parties. We have IPAC, which is like the umbrella body for political parties in Nigeria. And I'm also aware that there's a forum of national youth leaders of political parties in Nigeria. So I would expect that on such a topic, whoever it is that is a youth minister can engage these bodies with a view to getting a reduction across board for young people in politics. And then we also have the issue of legislation and policies. And now, I was part of the Not Too Young to Run campaign movement. Many of us were very actively involved in that campaign to reduce the age of eligibility for office. And it was a successful campaign, alhamdulillah. And, but what Not Too Young to Run did is that while we were able to get a reduction in the age of eligibility for elective office, we've still had a fair bit of, we still have a fair bit of work to do in actually enabling young people to be able to run. So we have a lot of young people saying, okay, yes, we know we're not too young to run, but we still think we are too poor to run. So there's the issue of finances. And another thing with that, again, is if we look at advanced democracies, politics is expensive everywhere in the world. I ran for national youth leader of the APC last year. And what I spent on that campaign would easily deliver a House of Reps campaign in some states. So politics is expensive everywhere in the world. And I think we also need to, I say this all the time, we also need to imbibe a culture of supporting candidates that we believe in, especially young people, especially women. We have to understand that we don't have it like more established people do, or people who are moving from well-established careers in the private sector into politics. You can't expect a young person. Very few young people can muster resources on the same level that our older politicians would be able to. So some of us, we were able to maybe pool resources, support each other, but that's not the reality for quite a number of people. So I think as Nigerians also, and I know that there seems to be, a very high trust deficit in the Nigerian society towards people in politics generally, and they don't care if they're young or old. But we need to also identify people that we think are qualified to occupy these offices and to support them with what we can. During the 2015 campaign, I was on the Muhammadu Buhari campaign team for the APC, and I recall how actively people wanted to chip in their own money because they loved this man, they believed in him, they wanted to support him. So I think as young people, one, we need to really do our politics right, make it clear that we're truly people-oriented. The main reason we're participating in politics is because we want to contribute to nation building, try and build trust and confidence in the people. And perhaps if they believe us, they might also be willing to support us. But generally, Nigerians, I think, also need to learn to be willing to put their money where their mouth is. If you think someone is young and they can get the job done, then please, by all means, support them.
Well, I guess everyone has heard your message. Rinsola Abiola, we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning, setting an agenda for whoever will be Minister of Youth. She is the National Coordinator, Progressive Sisters Network. Oh, don't let me say what I think about that. She's also
a very catchy name.
She's also a youth and gender advocate and an active member of the APC's Youth and Women's Wings. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
well, we have a bit of feedback, do we?
Yeah, we do. We've got this first one from Ademola Adiribigbe, who says, he's talking about judges' remuneration. He says, I agree entirely that the salary of judicial officers should be improved like any other professionals. It should not be over-dramatized. Increase in salary or condition of service must be relative to other services. A head of a professional service may be getting 10 to 20 million naira per month, while the head of other profession will earn less than 1 to 1.5 billion naira per month. The argument that they have powers of life and death, etc., notwithstanding, how much of money or salary will be given to governors who can free or convert death sentence to life imprisonment or even free the convict? What about the doctors who can declare that a judge has no sound health to function? All professionals are important. The eye should not behave as if it is the only part of the head.
Well, pretty strong one. So look at this one from Aram Neji. He says, there is no incentive you give to a corrupt person that will stop him or her from being corrupt. Disparity in remuneration of public servants is one of the major causes of disenchantment, ill-feeling, and corruption in Nigeria.
Festus Akimboyewa says, our new Attorney General and Minister of Justice has his work cut out for him. He must work hard to recover, rebuild, and restore our judiciary to its rightful place. Under him, we expect the judiciary to protect us from dangerous criminals, emphasize fairness, and guarantee individuals. May God help him.
Amen.
Please say amen.
Amen to that. This one is from Ejike Eze. He says, upholding the rule of law starts and ends with the executive government, period. No matter how inconvenient a court ruling is, it must be obeyed. Without the rule of law, there is no government, everything collapses, and we don't want this to happen. Well, we hope the new Attorney General and Minister of Justice is listening to you, Ejike Eze. Thank you for your email. And that's it on the program today, I believe. Yeah, Chamberlain.
Yes, indeed, it is it today. We do thank you all for your time and for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Thank you. I'm Aokweogun Yusuf.
Have a productive day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Enjoy the rest of your day. I am Bukola Koka.
Hi, I'm Pato Rankin, and they don't call me World Best for no reason. I only deal with the best. Be it auto or business, 100% claim is always guaranteed.
Welcome to world-class insurance services. We are Anchor Insurance.
Where insurance